All right, well, let's begin. Hello, everybody. I'm Starhawk. Welcome to our Designing a Regenerative Business little pop-up here. And I'm the Director of Earth Activist Training. We teach permaculture design with a grounding in spirit and a focus on organizing and activism. I'm here with some of our students. We're in the middle of a permaculture design course right now out in Northern California. We just had an awesome day of natural building and looking at stream restoration and built an herb spiral and just have been doing hands-on projects all day long. So it's nice to come in and spend a little time thinking about the business end, which I admit is not my personal strength. But I want to introduce to you Patty Love, who teaches our Regenerative Business Design course and is not only a wonderful permaculture designer and teacher, but really has the business end all down. Patty, do you want to say a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I am speaking to you from the traditional homelands of the Haudenosaunee folks in the place that's now called Rochester, New York. And I was so excited a handful of years ago when Starhawk and I started to talk about this, bringing together a couple of worlds that I live in, the business world and permaculture. And I'd been really excited to see how I could bring regenerative design principles and ethics to help build businesses that were more people care, earth care, and resource share friendly. So I have a traditional bachelor's degree in business, and I've worked in higher education, not-for-profit, manufacturing, finance, and small businesses over the course of my career. And I'm just excited to bring these two worlds together for this audience.
Great. Well, if it's okay with you, Patty, I'd love to start with a little bit of a meditation.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Take a breath. And I am here right now on the traditional lands of the Kashaya-Pomo out in what's sometimes known as Western Sonoma County, land that's been tended by traditional people for tens of thousands of years. It's my hope that the work we do with regeneration on all these different levels will be in alignment with this tradition of indigenous people in so many places of tending and caring for the land, and that we can learn how to better take up our responsibilities to be caretakers and caregivers and healing hands and loving heart for the earth. So settle yourself comfortably wherever you are and just take a few breaths. As you breathe in and out, I'd like you to just consider the air for a moment. This miraculous substance that keeps us alive, that's so vital to all of us. We can't go more than a few minutes without taking it in and breathing it out. And how the world is immersed in this abundant resource. This thing that we need so desperately comes to us every moment of our life. Now, sometimes it smells beautiful and good, sometimes maybe not so good, but as long as we're alive and breathing, we are taking in this thing, this core thing that we need. Consider the element of fire, the sunlight, the amazing abundance that showers the earth every day with energy. Now, this incredible gift of energy from the sun that powers everything on earth. sets the winds in motion and warms and cools the oceans and moves the currents, that shines down on all the green things that have that miraculous capacity to use that energy and sunlight to take air and water and turn them into food. And just take a breath and acknowledge the incredible abundance we are surrounded with of energy on this planet. And then let's think about water and how incredibly much water there is on the earth and how it moves around the earth from the oceans up into the clouds and down as rain, how it nourishes the green things and provides our food, how we need water for our lives, the beauty of flowing water and a rushing stream, and how those streams flow into great rivers and back down into the ocean, that the whole world is a web of water. And just take a breath and acknowledge the abundance, the incredible gift of water. And let's take a breath and acknowledge Earth itself. Again, the incredible gift of the minerals beneath our feet, the living soil, which is its own ecosystem, the incredible great trees that grow up, the animals and plants, the whole biosphere, the living ecosystem, the incredible diversity of life forms on Earth. Now we're surrounded by this abundance and diversity of life. And then taking a breath, let's acknowledge spirit. You know, spirit is something that's free, it's unlimited. It's really about how we shift our attitude in relationship to the world. You know, when we approach the world with wonder, with gratitude, with reverence, then the world is incredibly rich and abundant. And it feeds our spirit. And whether we have money or no money, we always have the option of enriching our spiritual connection to all those elements of life and to all the human beings in the community in our lives. So let us welcome spirit. And then taking a breath, let's just imagine yourself, again, think about yourself right now as a being surrounded by all these webs of abundance. That the earth, in her wisdom, provides everything we need to grow and thrive and fulfill our function, which I believe is to be the earth's healing hands and her appreciative eyes and her loving heart. If there's any place in your life that's feeling frantic about money or stressed or anxious or you don't have enough, just take a breath. Realize all the ways in which we are immersed in abundance and surrounded by abundance. And know that it is your right to be sustained and nourished by the abundance of the earth, so that you can do your part in giving back, in nourishing and sustaining and regenerating all of the life systems around us. Blessed be.
Thank you, Starhawk. And speaking of abundance, I also want to offer my gratitude for Charles Williams behind the scenes and Mariah Master working behind the scenes, and Elizabeth Call, the part of the Earth activist team that makes events like this possible. Since we boldly promised you could ask us anything, and we'd really rather probably not talk about things like our favorite color or our favorite joke or things, I thought we could just frame the conversation a little bit about regenerative business and what does that mean. So especially for the permaculture students, you've been learning there are a lot of different ways that we can talk about regenerative design depending on the context that we're using. And also we want to think about what we mean when we're talking about permaculture or regenerative design. So this is the definition that I work with, which is my own ongoing organic crafting of words together here. So I like to think of regenerative design as an interdisciplinary design approach that's based in and derived from the observation of indigenous practices of nature stewardship all over the world, and also observing natural ecological systems of relationships. And through this design, we're trying to repair and create regenerative and reciprocal systems for meeting human needs, while also enhancing the quality of life for all beings, plants, insects, fungi, non-human animals, lifting everyone as best we know how to do that as humans. And of course, we can use this idea of regenerative design for not only how we steward the land and how we craft our relationships in our communities, how our finances are set up, all of those things, but also how we design our businesses. And even how we do what we do every day in our own lives, and also in our lives as we're building a business. The students who are out there with Starhawk and Charles have probably heard these three ethics pretty often: earth care, people care, and resource share. So in regenerative business design, that's a foundation of how we're designing our businesses for earth care, people care, and resource share. And an example of people care ethic, living that, is to honor the first peoples of the lands where we live and do our work. And also to acknowledge the labor of all of the enslaved people who have contributed to the infrastructure and many systems and things that support us these days. Regenerative business design also is founded in permaculture principles. And I really like to think about, my favorite one on Starhawk's list is creativity is unlimited, much like she was saying, spirit is unlimited. So, obviously this is a very short time that we have together, but I have created this diagram to just help us think about how we can regeneratively design our businesses. And this is the diagram of all of the steps. And we don't have time to go through all of that tonight, but you can envision that looks like a spider web, right? And when we're thinking of regenerative business design, we're shifting from, the traditional capitalism to becoming more earth-based, where earth, as you see on the slide where you've got business, where E, the capital E of earth, is at the center of how we're doing our business. And you'll hear us talk a lot about the network pattern in some of the questions that we're going to be discussing tonight. So with that, we can go into, that's kind of our frame of what we're going to talk about with responding to questions. So we asked folks, when we sent out the invitations for this event, we asked folks to send in questions. And we're going to talk about some of those questions tonight. And oh, Starhawk, if you are speaking, you're muted right now. There you
What?
go.
You're muted.
Oh, okay. So yeah, thank you to everyone who gave us questions. We got some wonderful questions, and we got so many that we've tried to kind of organize them. Actually, Patty was the one who did the organizing into different kinds of like subject headings. And first one really is around earth care, making business more regenerative. So we had a number of questions around that. Some of them are around specific types of businesses like hip camping, vegan, ag products, computer businesses. How do we make them more regenerative? Integrating regenerative principles into mainstream. And how do we engage with capitalism when we want to be, we're working against systems of oppression?
Yeah, so just in thinking about that, thinking about those questions kind of as a whole, and then also individually, when I think about regenerative design, I think about being the change that I want to see in the world, that the famous quote from Gandhi. And so for me, I've learned, and I think I learned this from Starhawk, to not really give energy to the things that I'm working against, but really to focus my energy on what I'm working for and what I want to see in the world. So to build a business that is in alignment with the ethics and principles of permaculture. So for example, if 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 we have a computer-based business and we want it to be more regenerative, some of the things that we can do are to be thoughtful and careful about sourcing the computer, like trying to get the most environmentally friendly computer or the most socially, buying it from the company that embodies social justice the most, to things like looking for a cooperatively owned hosting company. If we're thinking about regenerative business and we're working on a computer, we might also want to be buying renewable energy, or maybe we have our own solar panels or wind turbines to provide the electricity for that to run. And one of the questions specifically talked about how do we do this when others around us don't have the same language or maybe even the same interest in regenerative business. So again, I think about that idea of being the change that I want to see in the world. I try to set an example, not telling other people what they should do, but just, offering, if somebody asks me a question about something that I've purchased, such as those nice brown recycled paper envelopes, and another opportunity to bring some regenerative business design principles into more traditional mainstream business would also be to offer teach-ins. If you find that you have people who are really curious, maybe, during lunch break, you could offer a teach-in about, pencils that come from the Forest Stewardship Council, something like that. Baby steps, start with what's easy and build up from there. So that's my thought in that area, Starhawk, with those questions that were about making businesses more regenerative.
Thanks, Patty. I always say to people, look, because I think sometimes people feel like if they get paid at all or they get anything at all, that's capitalism and that's bad and wrong. And that's not really sustainable. I always say, you getting paid fairly for your work is not what's wrong with capitalism. What's wrong with capitalism is you or someone not getting paid fairly for their work and somebody else, siphoning off the profits and getting paid unfairly much for your work.
Right?
So we can be clear about that, and I think that's helpful.
Yeah, and I also think like when abundance comes my way and
Mhm.
I'm really conscious of these ethics, then I can share that abundance in
Yeah,
ways where I can do good things in the world, right?
right.
So yeah, we just need I just think about trying to bring as many resources my way so that I can distribute them in ways that are going to try to make things better.
So there's also a number of questions that really kind of circle around people care. Like, how do you run an intergenerational business? What if you're 65 and your farming partner is 18? Which I think is probably good, because when you hit your 60s and 70s, it's really helpful to have somebody who's young and strong around. How do you find enough labor, and how do you keep people, employees, when they're good? How do you build community online? How to bring out people's sense of worth and their contribution to the world, and how do you make sure you make enough time for like yourself and your own needs and creativity, or like your own writing if your business is about, consulting around writing for other people.
Yeah, again, a lot of great questions. And as I was looking them over, I thought, gosh, this is all about people care. So the question about how, a 66-year-old farmer and an 18-year-old farmer can work together, it's really about communication. It's also, I think, to be successful is agreeing how you will handle disagreements before you have those disagreements. And I think, Starhawk, you teach that in your collaborative groups class, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Putting agreements in writing is really, it's a good practice. It's not about not trusting. It's really about clear communication. So if you're starting a new partnership with someone, I definitely recommend putting agreements in writing, because it helps everybody remember what they're responsible for and how you'll solve those problems, because they will happen. I also recommend setting up time for check-ins, like a weekly check-in, maybe more often when it's a new team, keeping those lines of communication open. In terms of having employees and attracting labor and keeping folks, again, people care. Like, create a place that people want to work by paying them well, by providing benefits and perks that are meaningful to them. And if you don't know what that is, ask them. And to be really transparent and vulnerable as a leader, to always be in integrity. That's another important part of people care ethic. And I think also, if we're building a business and we want people who we hire or who are partners with us to stay with us, we want to have opportunities for folks to grow. And just like when you plant a tree, there has to be enough room for that tree to grow and thrive. Same thing where people will stay with you longer if there's places where they can grow. I think in terms of community building, whether it's online or in person, again, it's about integrity and being vulnerable and transparent, and being consistent. That goes along with being in integrity. If you're trying to build an online community, maybe you have a certain day where you're, meeting as a group online. And some of the other questions that came in around people care with, how do you have time for yourself? We all, as business owners, deserve to also have people care. So I think about, for example, with my calendar, I have time that I work and time that for money and time that I don't work for money. Mm-hmm. And so if someone is an author and they want to work on their own projects, then putting in time where you can work on your own project, whether that's every day or one day a week, put it in your calendar and then stick to that. I think that's a good practice.
I want to just second that. As an author or writer, I find the way I get something done is if I actually schedule it and set aside the time and treat it like a job, even if I'm not getting paid immediately for it, but saying, okay, these hours are for my writing, and I don't take on other things during that time. I turn off the internet generally, unless I need to look something up, so I'm not tempted to start reading my emails or doom scrolling or watching endless YouTube videos about strange ways you can fix things in your home that you never thought of.
Yeah, that's about being in integrity with yourself for yourself too, right? And I did like this last question that was related to people care of how to bring out people's sense of worth and contribution to the world. So when I was thinking about that, I was thinking about, well, just being kind and curious, being a listener. Um, if you have people who are working for you or with you and you can empower them in some way to unfold and blossom, that's a really fantastic strategy. And remembering also with this question of that we're not trying to rescue or we're not trying to direct people to be their best. That can be an invitation if we're in a leadership position, we can, create this empowerment, but not an insistence that people do anything in particular, right?
Yeah. I think often giving people a chance to take on new things that are just at the edge of their capacity, so a little bit beyond what they're comfortable with, but not so far beyond their comfort zone that it's intimidating or frightening. It gives people a chance to step up and learn things little by little. And that can be a way of really empowering people to grow. And really talking with people and saying, well, what are your growing edges? Where do you want to learn? What do you want to focus on developing? That can be very helpful.
Agreed.
There's a bunch of questions about things like pricing, things that kind of come together around resource share. Like, how do you calculate your fee structure? How do you balance being a small business that has to survive with wanting to support, local responsible purchasing? There's an energy healer who would like to work within a gift economy, but that doesn't always work for people. Sometimes it makes people feel uncomfortable if they're not given a specific price. And in permaculture, a lot of people find they want to do design work, to do consulting work, but oftentimes people can't afford that unless they're wealthy or they're well off. And people who are poor or have fewer resources can't really afford to have someone come and design a food forest for them. So how do we make this available more broadly to people?
Yeah, pricing is such an interesting question because we do want to, price our products so that our business can be ongoing, so that it is regenerative, so that it's providing what we need for ourselves and our own financial responsibilities, in addition to all the people who we're working with. And so trying to get that right can be one of the trickiest things that I think that we do when we're designing a regenerative business. If you have a service-oriented business, the thing that you run into is that time is a limited resource. So if you're working with people one, there's only so many hours that you can do that in a week. And so you need to figure out, I recommend that people figure out how many hours they have available to meet with clients, for example, and, and then play around with the pricing. I do have a worksheet that we use in the regenerative business design class to make sure that the math works so that you're charging people enough that based on the number of appointments that you have, that you're generating that you need to have. It is tricky sometimes to try to, when you're starting out, if you're bootstrapping your business, which means you're starting it just with your own savings or money that you have, maybe even while you're working another job, how do you also try to do all those ethical things like supporting local business owners and, buying the recycled paper and things like that. So I think that building that into your business plan once you make that decision and you have that firm commitment to ethics and principles, then you build that into your business plan. And then I think if you can educate your customers about why your product might cost more than the thing that's mass produced, overseas somewhere, you can educate them and tell them, maybe list all of the local businesses that you support in running your business. Maybe you can be really transparent and give a list of all of the costs that go into your product. Like if you're going to print t-shirts, how much it costs for you to buy that t-shirt, and your electricity and things like that. So you can be really transparent, and then that helps people understand that you're charging more maybe than the mass produced item, because you are trying to do things that are better for the environment and for your community. Those questions about the gift economy, I think that's really interesting. And I know here in the Earth Activists community that many events are free or by donation. And that can be a really great way to work. And I have run into that a lot when I've offered sliding scale, of people say, well, how much should I charge you? So a couple of ideas are, you can have two options. You can have an option that's pay what you can, or pay what spirit leads you to pay. And then the other option can be a sliding scale. And along with that sliding scale, you could have a chart of, if your income is, in this range and your household size is in this range, then here's a suggestion for what you would pay. That's one way to kind of bring together the gift economy and the sliding scale, along with providing concrete pricing. And I learned this from someone else, as many of the things that I've learned, are information that someone else passed on to me. So that question about wanting to bring regenerative design or like food forest gardens to folks who might not be able to afford hiring one of us as a designer and a consultant and perhaps an installer, in addition to sliding scale. I think a fun way to make that happen is if you have a client who can pay you to design and do an installation or either part of that, turn that into a workshop. And so, you might be getting paid by the client, and you might be getting paid by the workshop participants, or maybe they're coming for free and they're contributing some labor. So turn that into a workshop, and then folks can learn those skills and then take that back to their own communities or apartments and apply that. And another option is to think about getting someone to sponsor the class. Like maybe there's a small business community or a chamber of commerce, or a local landscape, a local nursery. And if they sponsor the class, then people could come for free. So those are some thoughts about how to kind of bringing the questions of ethical pricing into our work as we're creating a regeneratively designed business.
Thanks, Patty. There's also a bunch of questions that kind of are in a similar vein around profitability and viability, which I think are questions we all kind of struggle with. Here's one I really identify with, a woman who's been an artist their whole life and trying to make a business out of their art, but really are finding themselves working to pay for their art rather than their art paying for their life. There's questions about, how does regenerative business design improve a business's bottom line? How do you start when you've got a tiny budget? How do you integrate permaculture, agroforestry, or things where the results actually take a long time, like with trees, it takes a long time for them to bear fruit. how do you make that a profitable, viable business when you need returns right away?
Yeah, those are all really important questions because starting a business is one thing and keeping it running is a completely different thing. Sometimes it's easy to get your first client, and then where do you get your second and your third and your 10th? And how do you, have your 15th client and make sure that you're, bringing enough money to keep your business going? Because maybe if you're giving away too much, you're not really taking care of yourself financially in the process. So I always think about again, like good design. So for the artist who wants to turn that from a hobby into a business, I would really recommend making a plan to do that, making a business plan. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a couple of minutes. I think same thing for, when you have a tiny budget, and that again might be that where you're, bootstrapping your business, sometimes that's called. How do you turn that into a viable business? That is exactly what the Regenerative Business Design course is designed to help you with. So just for a quick minute, I'll just mention that starting February 27th, we have this 8-week course that's a combination of live and recorded. There's a live course every week, and there's also recorded video every week and some exercises. And if you come to this course and you do all of the exercises in the course, you will end up having a business plan where you will know how to go from whatever tiny budget you have to the business that you want to have, because we'll take you through that during the course of the course. And I just want to tell people that we do have early bird pricing on this class, where up until January 29th, there's a 20% early bird discount. And we're going to be running this course starting February 27th. So that's one thought. Some of the questions that are being asked are pretty big questions, really. When I think about the idea of, it was a really good question where somebody wants to start an agroforestry business and selling herbs down the road, but it's going to take a while for those trees and shrubs and herbs to get established. That's where we use that principle about creativity. And so if we think creatively, if we make a good business plan to solve that problem, then the question is, how do we generate income in the meantime while those herbs are getting established, while the trees are growing? And one of the ways to do that is to teach some workshops about food forest design, maybe. And during the workshop, you get some help from the folks in the workshop to get those trees and herbs planted. So you get some of your planting done. And then also, if you can teach people how to use the products that you imagine selling down the road, a particular herb or tincture, if you can have classes that teach them how to use those while your herbs are getting established, you can not only generate an income for yourself from charging for those workshops, but you can also build your customer base too, because if you keep track of all of the people who come to the workshops, not all of those folks are going to want to go out and do their harvesting. Some of them will become customers for you. So I think that's a way where you can, start your business now and kind of get yourself through that transition until, until your trees are producing nuts. So that's those are some thoughts I have about viability and longevity for your business. Both some generic information there and then that really specific one.
Thanks, Patty. There's also some questions about business structure, like being an LLC or a nonprofit? Is it worth it to get nonprofit status? Um, and here's sort of the classic question, right? What is required to turn an idea into an actual business? But asking specifically about paperwork, tax documents, etc.
Yeah, I love that question because then I can give my favorite permaculture answer that you all probably say sometimes too. That depends.
Yeah.
The paperwork that you have to do to start a business depends on the kind of business you're starting, the business structure that you do select, and where you're starting your business. What your township, your state, your country, those things will all determine what the laws and rules are about starting a business. So I can't answer that particular question for this particular person, but I can address a little bit about business structures and that question about not-for-profit or an LLC. So in regenerative business design, we do talk about a lot of different business structures. And I'm not qualified to give legal or tax advice. But there is a really big difference between an LLC and a not-for-profit. So with an LLC, that stands for Limited Liability Corporation, and folks will file paperwork for an LLC to give themselves legal protection so that their personal assets are not on the line if there's a problem with the business, if the business gets sued or something like that. That's a reason for filing that LLC, and basically you're creating a legal entity when you file that. With a not-for-profit, one thing that's important to remember is that not-for-profits still have to have finances that are regenerative. They still have to, at least break even. But a not-for-profit is an IRS designation that requires different paperwork. And something to keep in mind with a not-for-profit is that if you ever dissolve the not-for-profit, my understanding is that all the assets of that not-for-profit have to be donated to another not-for-profit. So, for example, if somebody buys land, they might want to have an LLC buy the land, because if a not-for-profit actually bought that land, then at some point, if the not-for-profit ceased to exist, that land would have to get donated to another place. Now, maybe that's not a problem, but so in that case, often an LLC would be formed to buy the land, and it would rent the land back to a not-for-profit.
Yeah, there's a Occidental Arts and Ecology Center, a very long-lasting intentional community near here that does some tremendous work around regenerative design in many different ways, but that's how they structured their organization. An LLC owns the land, and then they have a nonprofit that rents from the LLC. The nonprofit allows them to receive tax-deductible donations, and also if you're running educational programs and things, there's a number of advantages to being a nonprofit. But the LLC means the land can stay with the people who actually live on it, and the decisions about it can be made by the people who actually live on the land.
Yeah,
there's questions also about business plans, like how much should be on paper before you ask for partners or investors, how to get out of your own way, how do you get buy-in into your business plan, how do you build a sustainable retreat center?
Yes, so some really general questions and some very specific ones there. Business plan, again, I can't emphasize how important that is to do. If we were to go out onto the land and randomly just start planting plants and building fences and things, we'd probably end up having a lot of problems because we hadn't taken the time to do well thought out design. And I mean, even when we do a good design, sometimes there's surprises, unintended consequences. But that a business plan is like your design for your business. And it's a multi-purpose document because it helps keep you focused on where you're headed. And there's a bunch of research you have to do it. So you're really getting organized for your business, and it's helpful to you. And it's multi-purpose because if you're trying to get some folks to invest in your business, whether it's family or an investor of some sort, venture capital even, or if you're trying to borrow money from the bank, you'll need a business plan. So how much do you have to write down? I would write down your entire business plan. And how you get there, again, that's one of the things we can do together in the Regenerative Business Design course. Also, the Small Business Association has a lot of free online resources, some of which I use in the Regenerative Business Design class. So you can use the Small Business Administration's resources to create a business design. I think that it's so interesting to me because in the Earth Activist Network, this question about building a sustainable retreat center, I think that this is like the fourth or fifth person in this community that's wanted to do that. So isn't that exciting?
Yeah.
Yeah. So make a good business plan.
There's some questions also finally about marketing. A number of them around social media. Basically, I hate doing social media, but I know I have to. How do I do it better? How do I promote stuff both online and in-person programs? And there's a writer looking for regenerative ways to get work out to the public. Regenerative approaches to raising the visibility of your business. Is there such a thing as regenerative marketing?
I think yes. I think marketing is one of those times where we really want to think about this network pattern. First of all, social media, the internet, I mean, those are all the network pattern, right? Just as much as the mycelium beneath our feet. So the great thing, there's, a lot of pluses to the network pattern because it's so interconnected that if one strand gets broken, the whole thing doesn't fall apart. And also, it's a great way to both concentrate resources and distribute resources, right? So we can think about designing a marketing program that works like a network. Now, we might use social media or we might not, but at the heart of it, this is all about relationships. And so we can build those relationships online using social media if we like to do that, or if we're good at that and we don't mind that we don't like it, or if we can hire or trade with somebody who loves doing that, because there are people who just totally love doing that. And they can do that internet marketing. Another way to market is to think about leveraging those nodes, those intersection points. So if you have clients who have bought something from you or worked with you, can you inspire them to bring more clients to you? Can you offer them some sort of a discount or a free product if they refer someone to you? This is a way to build your business that's regenerative. You can also set up affiliate programs where people will do marketing and they would get a percentage of each sale. That's a great example of using the network pattern. And I also like to think about the ways where we can make marketing more in the physical, tangible world in ways that are regenerative. Something that I learned from one of my nursery friends is he has business cards that are pieces of paper that are printed out. You did some design work on the computer with logo and contact information, and then cut the sheet of paper into quarters and folded them into little seed envelopes. And so whenever he goes tabling somewhere, when he hands out business cards, there's seed packets in there. So if you have a marketing tool like a seed packet or a baseball cap or a t-shirt or a tote bag that has your information on it, that's something that's genuinely useful. And maybe it's, something that's, it's an organic cotton tote bag that you hand painted, and maybe you traded with an artist or something. But if you're creating something in the physical realm that can market for you over and over again, that's a way to make that be regenerative. Oh, and I'll tell you, this is one of the things that I thought of for my own business. Is I was going to the NOFA, New York, Northeast Organic Farming Association of New York Winter Conference, and I had some t-shirts made up with my logo on the front, and on the back they say, "Ask me about permaculture." And so I was walking around at the conference, wearing this t-shirt, and I had a few people say, "Hey, what's permaculture?" So these are some ways where we can do regenerative marketing. It just takes a little bit of creativity.
Thanks. And then we're almost at the end of our time, but there are some questions here that maybe don't fit into any category. Like, how do you find ethical institutions to invest profits into? That's an optimistic question. I like that one.
Yes. So that goes into the realm of financial advising. And that's definitely out of my area of expertise. But I will say that I know that for one thing, there are actual mutual funds and that have criteria that make them more socially just. They don't invest in things that we might consider detrimental to humans or the planet, like fast food, or they don't invest in guns. So there's a bunch of different socially responsible investments. But another way to invest in a way that is regenerative is to think about investing in land that you would help create access to people who don't have access to land, and you could buy some land and share that with people who want to start a farm, or multiple people who want to start different land-based businesses all in one spot. You could invest in a local startup business. Those are some ways where you can, if you happen to be blessed with abundant resources and you want to do something that's really regenerative, is to find ways to, invest in something that you really feel strongly about and believe in. And maybe some of it you just also like give away. Maybe you figure out that there's a percentage that you donate either as voluntary land tax, or to, not-for-profit, do some work that, find out how to support a project that Indigenous folks in your area are running. I think those are ways that we can invest that are regenerative.
Yeah, we've had lots of discussions in our course. There's so many young people that are really excited about getting onto the land and doing regenerative work and are learning the skills to do it, but don't have the money to get land to do it. So finding ways around that could be a really worthwhile investment. There's also questions about insurance for small businesses that don't have a lot of money, grant funding for regenerative businesses. I like this one. What do we need to unlearn?
Yeah, I think that's where taking a permaculture class is so helpful, because I feel like my problem solving skills increased exponentially after taking a couple of Earth activist training courses. And my first PDC was not Earth activist, but it was what I call a kitchen table PDC. But then when I got out to do things with my hands, with all of you at Earth Activists, it really, learning permaculture design really helped free up my thinking, and my problem solving skills are so much different, and I'm so much more open-minded about problem solving with learning about permaculture. I think I've learned how to be attached to needs but not strategies, and I've also learned how to just like really brainstorm and then, choose a solution. And I lost a little bit of track of where we were, but about unlearning. Yeah. So we can kind of unlearn, rigid thinking. And there was another question in there where someone asked, like, what's the most important regenerative design skill we can teach our children?
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think this ties in where I think it's about teaching children and ourselves to really use our powers of observation. So if we're grounded in those ethics of earth care, people care, resource share, whether we call it resource share or fair share or future care, if our hearts are grounded in that, and then if we can use our powers of observation and be willing to do critical thinking, we can do some really amazing things.
I like that. I would say for me, one of the main core things I feel permaculture teaches and could teach our children is to look at the world not as a bunch of things and objects, but as sets of relationships, and to understand that what we're designing, not like assemblages of things, but sets of relationships. That is a big shift in thinking. There's a few we didn't quite get to, like how do we use permaculture principles when working with our inner transformation? And I would say I think a lot of them do work really well when we apply them to our inner work. Maybe not ones about like planting strategy, but maybe about things like valuing diversity within ourselves as well as around us. Understanding that edge where two different systems meet creates a more dynamic and sometimes more creative system. So challenging ourselves, like where are our edges? Can we embrace them? How do we find that learning edge where, again, you're going a little bit beyond your comfort zone, but not so far out of it that you just give up. In permaculture, we talk a lot about needing a balance between disturbance and equilibrium. And I think that works well with our inner work as well, that we need a certain amount of disturbance. We need to shake things up within ourselves and get out of our rut sometimes, but we also need periods of equilibrium, come back to balance. We can't always be in the midst of drama and conflict. We need those times of peace and reflection and going inward.
Yeah. And being able to be flexible, and that helps us be more resilient, right?
Yeah. And there's one question about permaculture farming and mushroom farming. And I would say if you want to learn about mushrooms, Paul Stamets' work and books are just a wealth of information. And there are many businesses around now doing mushroom farming. I think that's a potential for a very regenerative business. So maybe find a business near you and see if you can get a job or volunteer or pick their brains. And you can be doing a lot of good with mushroom farming, both in providing food and also providing resources for bioremediation and healing on the earth.
Yeah, one of my favorite ways to learn skills like that is to find somebody near me and just let them know that I'm not completely green. I have, farming, growing experience, and could I come out and work with them for a couple of days? And I think a lot of people are willing to, chat and teach you what they know while you're working alongside them. And that way you're creating that relationship of reciprocity.
That's great. Well, I think that's pretty much it, Patty, and I think we're at the end of our time. Is there any last words of wisdom you want to leave us with?
Well, just as I was thinking about how to tell people about the Regenerative Business Design course, I was thinking that it's kind of like, this is just a fun way of looking at it. I like to be a little playful and irreverent sometimes. It's like if Business 101 and permaculture had a baby, it would be this class. And then, for folks who are maybe further along or already have a business and they're feeling good about that, we have the Maven Makers group as well. So with the Maven Makers group, we meet once a month as a group, and it's a great opportunity to talk about things like pricing and marketing. And, we get a lot of brainstorming going in there. And then also each of the Mavens and I meet individually once a month as well. So that's my little plug, just in terms of any parting words of wisdom. I guess I think if you have a business that you think is a good idea, do some work to investigate and see if you can make your dream come true, assuming that you want to be a business owner. And there are a lot of great free resources out there. The Small Business Administration has a lot, and probably somewhere near you, you can also find a small business development corporation. They're usually housed at universities. So it's called the SBDC. So we're always glad to have you as a student, of course. And, there are also these resources that you might be able to find if being a student isn't the right thing for you right now.
Thank you. And I want to say thank you to the Earth Activist Training Team. We do have a lot of courses. Patty's course is coming up. We have courses in permaculture, from our beginning permaculture design course to our longer term program in regenerative land management. That's a multi-year program that really teaches the whole spectrum of skills you need to take on land and manage it regeneratively. And Patty's course is one piece of that, because you need those business financial skills to really do it. But there are many others, from water to soil to forestry to empowering, like working together in groups and all of those different things. So check it out at earthactivisttraining.org. And I want to take a breath and say thank you to the abundant elements around us of air and fire and water and earth and spirit, and the incredible world we live in that showers us with so much potential abundance every day. And thank you to all of you who sent in questions and joined this. It was really quite interesting, and I feel like I learned a lot and got some new ideas. I've taken Patty's course before, and I might have to just take it again and work on a new idea.
Wonderful.
So I think this is it. Time to say thank you and good night. And may your life be filled with abundance, and may you be part of Mother's regeneration team.
Thank you.